Welcome to the broadcast. This is part 3 of my Idaho 4 series. If you haven't seen part 1 and 2 yet, I recommend you check them out for more context. Readings from November and December 2022. I'm able to go back and look at the things that I said about the case because they are time-stamped in private messages. I can totally understand any skepticism you may have about my readings now that there is a murder accused, and I'm saying it after the fact. I will say, this video isn't an ego thing for me, I'm sharing it for your interest. The cards. The Nine of Swords. I pulled this card several times. The perpetrator can't sleep at night, but oddly feels no guilt. So doesn't sleep, but the reason for that doesn't relate to feelings of guilt. For a moment, the perp is worried about getting caught, but then snaps out of it and goes back to normal life. We have now seen that Kohberger is essentially an insomniac and was awake in the middle of the night when he was arrested. His neighbors have even reported that they would hear him cleaning at odd hours of the night. The Hierophant. I got this card at least 4 times. It really stuck with me. It meant bad student or bad teacher. BK apparently was a bit of both when he worked at Washington State University as a teaching assistant while he did his PhD. He was both a teacher and a student.
He was pretty strict as far as grading goes. When he came into class, he was very, not super mentally present. He would stand up at the front, look at the ground. He had a lot of like boilerplate responses he would give people rather than, maybe something he had thought up on the spot. It seemed like he would be, he'd come in knowing what he was going to say to like most interactions. And then when he would grade your papers, he would be grading you on what he ended up calling like a higher standard. But what it really felt like to us was he was grading us like he would have graded himself as a PhD student. And so that was just kind of like, we were all annoyed by him. And so I knew his name, I knew like, oh, T.A. Bryan, like he sucks at this. Like he's grading us too harshly. And that was like an annoyance. But obviously beyond that, we just thought he was a little weird and kind of, a bad grader.
At least one of the times I pulled this card, it signaled an educational institution, but I was sure it wasn't a staff member from the University of Idaho. I didn't consider Washington State University just across the state line. There was a missed opportunity on my behalf by not looking into it further. The Two of Wands. I asked how many assailants were in the house. I saw a dark cloud come through that kitchen sliding door and 2 figures in the cloud. I read this as being either a partnership formed between 2 individuals or a person who has something like a split personality. I also got a third older man that was somehow involved, maybe in the car or something like that. The Seven of Swords, the Thief card. Protect your home, possessions, and even your relationship from outsiders. You need to be vigilant, keep your wits about you. This ended up really coming true when Kohberger's first charge was that of burglary. The Temperance card. I didn't get a lot on this reading, just that there was a lot of emphasis on decision making. The Moon. I got confusion, disappointment, disillusionment, a lot of high emotions, a lot of risk. The perpetrator may have not fulfilled the fantasy as expected, or things didn't go quite as expected. Evidence at the crime scene. Towards the end of December, I dreamed about those domed buttons that you get on clothing. I thought it was possible that one of those was dropped at the scene. It has come out that the touch DNA on the knife sheath came from a domed button. Ethan Chapin's energy reading. Sometimes if spirit wants to speak, your ears will pop loudly for no reason. You aren't traveling up a hill or on a plane. It just pops. One night I was saying to myself that I felt I could connect to Ethan's energy, then went about my typical evening routines. Afterwards, I sat in the chair I use for readings. My ears popped so loudly, I thought, oh my god, this is it. Then it started. I was in the point of view of the perp entering the sliding door. It felt like every step I was taking was methodical, almost robotic. Like, okay, I've made the decision to go through the door. Now what is my next decision? And so on and so forth. Then what I saw switched to Ethan. I saw Ethan walk along the hall, and as he did, he cocked his head to one side, like you would if you were listening to something. The next thing I saw was a man covered entirely in black. I was in Ethan's position, and this man was right on him, and Ethan was lower down, possibly even on the ground. This man's eyes were huge and bulging. I thought that this might have been from adrenaline. His mouth was very wide and grimacing, like he was enjoying it. I didn't feel a knife or any pressure on Ethan from this man. I felt Ethan's life force shrink down to the size of a pea. I felt who he really was in his heart, and he was a good and kind young man. Really good. I see Zana from far. A man is on her chest. He dealt the final blow. He is a different man, not the same one that was over Ethan. He was wearing a black top. He gets off her chest and makes a deep sigh, like, yes, I've done it, proud of himself. He is blonde. I ask to show me something to identify him. The vision of him freezes, and as I zoom in, his black clothing changes to blue mechanic overalls. There is an embroidered name badge on the left side of his chest, red border and white background. There is a name in red. His name is James. I can't hold the vision any longer, and the session ends. I am so sorry for Ethan's family. This vision was really hard to share. I want to add that the methodical decision-making at the beginning of that vision could be explained in how Kohberger wrote those online questions for criminals. These questions were to help him understand their thought process. For a long time, I thought the perp was someone with an extreme ideology, an extremist male. So far, all we know about Kohberger in that regard is that he is an extreme vegan. After his arrest, I wondered if in fact he himself was channeling during the crime, channeling the criminals that he had read about and had interviewed for his studies. That then gives a confusing picture of who this perpetrator is, who this chameleon is. I mean, you can look at several photos of him and he looks different in all of them. By this point, you're probably wondering if I feel that Bryan Kohberger did it. Psychically, the three strong links that I have seen which could connect him to the crime is the Hierophant, the bad teacher and student, the Nine of Swords, sleepless nights, and possibly those large eyes. But I have to admit, the day before his arrest, out of nowhere, I suddenly got the feeling that police would arrest the wrong guy, or make some sort of mistake with their arrest. Then I was informed of an arrest the very next day. He could have done it, but we really need the disclosure of evidence to see if guilt can be proven beyond reasonable doubt. 6 months on, this case still has so much energy around it. I think that has potentially affected readings for those participating in this type of work. Just saying that for what it's worth. I hope you found this broadcast interesting. Please like and subscribe. Thank you for watching. Until next time.